start with the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performance was just lacked that intensity.
I've generally struggled with the pressure of the performance rankings, but Adrian, this is your first time in the hot seat. So what are you going with in the red?
Go easy on me, Nathan. Go easy on me over the next while. I'm a debutant here. We were discussing this over back a little bit yesterday evening as to who would fit into which exact shade. I mean, it was grand up until about 9 o'clock last night when the football world exploded with the news about Ronaldo, and that's where we're going to kick things off. Ronaldo does Piers Morgan is the short story. The interview is going out, I think, Wednesday or Thursday on, what's it called?
Talk TV.
Talk TV. Never known, everybody knows about Piers Morgan. What's it called? Uninterrupted, whatever it is. And then, nobody's ever heard of the channel.
Is Talk TV the same thing as GB News? Or is it a different station completely? I'm told a different station completely.
Okay. He's done this explosive interview. It's crossed a lot of the back pages and some of the front pages even this morning. It's that explosive, is Ronaldo's interview with Piers Morgan. It kind of feels like his Roy Keane MUTV moment, and that he may never play for the club again, would be my suspicion. So we do appreciate that. You know, you might have not got the ins and outs of the exact details of this interview just yet, so we've a couple of clips to bring you. This is Ronaldo in conversation with Piers Morgan. We've 2 clips. First one is, he's been betrayed by Manchester United.
They're trying to force you out.
Yes, not only the coach, but the other 2 or 3 guys there around the club.
At the senior executive level?
Yes, that I felt betrayed.
And you think they're trying to get rid of you?
Honestly, I shouldn't say that, I don't know, but listen, I don't care, people should listen the truth. Yes, I feel betrayed, and I felt that some people that don't want me here, not only this year, but last year too. I don't know what's going on, but since the Sir Alex Ferguson left, I saw not evolution in the club. The progress was 0. For example, we have an interesting point that how the club, as Manchester United, after suck Ole, they bring sport directive Ralph Rangnick, which is something that nobody understands. This guy is not even a coach. A bigger club like Manchester United bring sport directive. Surprised not only me, but all the world. You know, nothing changed. Surprisingly, not only the pool, the jacuzzi, even the gym. Even some points, the technology, the kitchen, the chefs, which is I appreciate, lovely persons. They stop in a time which is it surprised me a lot. I thought I will see different things, as I mentioned before, technology, infrastructure. But unfortunately, we see many things that I'm used to see when I was 20, 21, 23. So surprised me a lot.
Yeah, this is Ronaldo lashing out. There's an Alan Partridge quality to that, by the way, that I hadn't fully picked up on. A Travelodge style.
Jacuzzi technology has moved on massively over the past 10 years. And if Manchester United aren't keeping up with that...
Do you think there was a comment in there somewhere?
He was about to go to town on the chef. And in fairness, there was a one little glimmer of self-awareness there where he thought, "Ooh, if I personalise this against the chef, there's definitely going to be a backlash."
The thing is, he had never eaten in that canteen again, either way. Is he? Like, that's it. That's him done now, as far as I'm concerned. This is his Roy Keane MUTV moment. He's hit the nuclear button, which is Piers Morgan in this instance. And obviously, he wasn't in the squad over the weekend. He wasn't in the team over the weekend. They listed illness yesterday as a reason that he wasn't going to be in there. And it's one of those loose terminologies that everybody kind of suspected. The main thought was that he'd rest himself for the World Cup. Maybe that was also true. But
well, when was this interview recorded? We need to find out. Because if this was recorded in the middle of last week...
Well, Morgan was tweeting about it yesterday afternoon saying international news desks, you need to be at the ready from 10 o'clock tonight or whatever it was that started to release the teasers that you're going to be busy. So whether they had recorded it in the week and he was sitting on it for that period of time, who knows?
Is anything he said there wrong?
I think there's two sides to it. I think the betrayal is absolute claptrap in the sense that, like, you know, he's given out about the coach, some executives within the club. Of course they're trying to get rid of him. They view him as no longer somebody who's offering something to the club. Well, so it's within their remit for a player who's earning an absolute fortune to be able to say, this is no longer an asset for us, we're spending too much money, we would like to get rid of you. So I think that the idea that he should be sort of lauded as he walks in the door and, you know, bow down in front of Ronaldo as he comes into work every day is just ridiculous, because Ronaldo 2022 is not the player in physicality that he thinks he is in his head.
But even that clip, I really want to see the full interview if Piers Morgan delves deeper, which I suspect he won't. I suspect this is going to be the most sycophantic interview we've ever seen. The very fact he sat with Piers Morgan, Cristiano Ronaldo knew what he was going to get. But he's talking about last season, certain individuals wanting rid. Like Cristiano Ronaldo handed in a transfer request during the summer. He was desperate to leave the club. You assume not because of the individuals in the background, but because he knew everything he's just outlined, that the club was going nowhere fast. Wasn't impressed with Ralf Rangnick, as I think is completely acceptable, that he's come back. And you know what was Ralf Rangnick? Probably the greatest waste of money Manchester United have ever spent, maybe with the exception of Cristiano Ronaldo over the past 18 months. But I think a lot of Manchester United supporters will listen to that and go, yeah, Cristiano Ronaldo is one of the greatest players of all time, who has set unbelievably high standards for himself, who in the 10 years since Manchester United last won a league has won 4 Champions League, has won countless league titles, has won 5 Ballon d'Ors, and he's saying what we do isn't on a par with Real Madrid or Juventus or the best clubs in world football, and that's because of the Glazers and unnamed executives. So calling that out, he's dead right to call that out.
Yeah, I think there are two sides to it. I think on the I've been betrayed bit, I think that's nonsense. And I was listening to TalkSport in the wind.
But unless he was betrayed, unless when he came back to the club, he was told, we're going to put a massive investment in, we're going to build a team around you, and over the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to get back in the Champions League, we're going to challenge for that, we're going to challenge for titles, and then 6 months later, Ralf Rangnick is his manager.
But to borrow a phrase, new information came to light, man. Like, you weren't, we thought you were this guy, and it turns out you're not. You're not.
He was their top scorer last season.
I know he was, and like, look at it, you know, we'll talk to Daniel Harris a little bit later on. Maybe you think, I was watching Match of the Day last night, and Jermaine Defoe was making the point that, like, they're goal shy and shot shy and whatever other phrase you want to use in front of goal. And maybe if he was in the team yesterday, they would have been slightly better. But we've been saying that now for a couple of years. Maybe if Ronaldo was in the team, they would have done a bit better. And then when he's there, you know, there's no work rate about him. And of course he gets a few goals. He gets
more goals than anybody else. I know, Sean Childs would say here every Thursday evening, what more do you want from him?
I know.
What more do you want from him?
A bit of work.
Actually, I think, a bit of work. I thought last season he didn't fit into the system, but when I've seen him play this season, he's generally putting in the effort. Yeah, he can't do what he did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But on the pitch, when he's been in the mood, I think he's still good enough for a place in this Manchester United squad.
He says he's been betrayed. His version, it's Monday morning, of being betrayed is everybody else's. He's just not up to it, and I think that he's too blind to see that from his position at the minute, and also the idea that, you know, he's been betrayed partly because, you know, he wasn't allowed to leave the club. Is that the insinuation, that he couldn't get out of it? But then you had Roy Keane saying that, you know, that the club were blocking his path to get out of there in the not that distant past. So
what does Roy Keane say about this? This obviously was timed for the end of the Premier League, first part of the Premier League season, so he doesn't have to go back into Manchester United, but it also means that we're unlikely to get the full Gary Neville, Roy Keane reaction tonight or over the coming days, though I'm sure we'll hear from a lot of those former Manchester United players. But Keane has been a staunch defender of Cristiano Ronaldo. And you just say, you know, there are similarities between the way Keane exited the club and the way he questioned people. I think Keane's was more of the players, more so than it seems to be the structure that Cristiano Ronaldo's having a go at. But like, this is unacceptable. Like, Wayne Rooney was very honest on TalkSport last week, saying, like, there's no way in hell Roy Keane would have stood for a player speaking like this. The best bit, which they haven't released the clip of, but I'd imagine is going to go viral, is his criticism of Wayne Rooney. So I think everyone was quite impressed with Wayne Rooney that he didn't take the usual former player line of going, oh, he's one of the greatest players who've ever played the game, and you know, you got to respect his opinion. Said he was completely out of line, that, you know, you can't do what he did and can't refuse to come on. Ronaldo said, I don't know why he criticises me so badly. Probably because he finished his career and I'm still playing at a high level. Then with a smirk, Ronaldo added, I'm not going to say that I'm looking better than him, which is true.
He's just so vain, like, isn't he? It's just, he can't help himself.
Like, that's hardly breaking news that Cristiano Ronaldo is vain.
I know, but like, I mean, Jesus, just give it a break for a minute while you're here, right? He's chosen to do this interview, and what is he actually expecting to get out of it? Is the other thing. Like, is he expecting that the great United fan base are sort of suddenly, you know, motivated to the point that there are, you know, they ditched their Glazers out protests in favour of Ronaldo in, or is he thinking about? I mean, basically, look at. Maybe he's trying to force a way out of the club, and in that regard, he probably has. In that, like, he ain't ever going back, and there's nobody that can make a case for that now. Even the most staunch, I think, Ronaldo fans. It's done now.
Well, it is, but they may well be in a similar position to last summer where Cristiano Ronaldo wanted to leave, Manchester United wanted him to leave, but they couldn't find a club to take him because nobody could afford his wages, or the clubs that he wanted to go to felt that he didn't fit their system. So perhaps now he has something lined up post-World Cup. But I wonder what his target audience is here. So anybody who watches the Premier League or understands English football will look at this and think, like, Cristiano Ronaldo, as you say, hasn't been making the impact that he was 5-10 years ago. He's no longer the best player in the world. But Cristiano Ronaldo is arguably bigger than Manchester United in large parts of the world for people who take a passing interest in football. And if we woke up this morning and Tom Brady had done this interview about Tampa Bay, from afar I'd be going, well, Tampa Bay is obviously an absolute shambles. Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback who's ever lived. How's he having to put up with this? The chef is no good. Like, why aren't they listening to him? They're going to have to absolutely change everything. Whereas if you're following NFL day to day, you may realise, well, actually, Tom Brady's not the player he once was. And Tampa Bay, yeah, everything's not perfect. And there's obviously a comparison there with the Glazers as well. I don't know. But I think there's a wider audience for Cristiano Ronaldo that he's talking to rather than the hardcore Manchester United fan, who you'd have to assume are somewhat alienated by this, even if he is making a lot of valid points. But Ronaldo's a worldwide superstar. And I think an awful lot of those people who are more interested in Cristiano Ronaldo than Manchester United will go, yeah, it's probably right.
Yeah, I think for those people who basically what you're saying is they don't have the full picture, right? Save it for your book. Wait 10 years' time. Settle your scores then.
This is the new book. A 2-minute viral clip. I'm going to have a look and see how many views. When I could barely sleep last night. I wanted to see, was there more to come?
I think I think the reality is that this guy, right? He's out the door. The point about the no evolution of the club is spot on.
7.8 million views. Yeah. That's better than writing any book.
The point about the no evolution of the club is spot on. The Ranić stuff. Suddenly we've got maybe a better insight into why the club has been going backwards over the last number of years, if what he's saying is true. But my conclusion out of all of that is, here's Ronaldo, one of the best players in his mind, and now in Piers Morgan's mind, as opposed to when he previously thought Messi was the best player. In his mind and in Piers Morgan's mind, he's the best player to have ever played the game, right? So he walks in the door there a couple of years ago and he's looking around him going, chef, you're still making like potato waffles and whatever else it is, and you just end up to it, and the jacuzzi technology is not right, and who is this auditor? I've never heard of before, and what's he doing? Why didn't he stand up and go, lads, here, I've been to Juventus and I've been to Real Madrid over the last 10 years. They do things a bit differently here. I have a few ideas. It sounds like...
But he has. It sounds like he has done that. Do you think Ronaldo's sitting there in the dressing room bitching and moaning? No chance. Ronaldo is in day one going, what the hell is going on here?
Look, I'm surprised to hear that the jacuzzi technology is not what it should have been, right? Or that the stat stuff wasn't as good as it was, or the fitness stuff, or the diets, or the menus. Because
you're not surprised. You're not surprised to hear that. Everybody knows that. That's the problem with Manchester United. But you look at the stadium. The stadium is falling apart because the Glazers haven't invested in it. So there's no investment on the pitch. There hasn't been. Well, there's been investment on the pitch, but there's been little or no investment off the pitch, and that I'm not shocked at all to hear that extends to not having the latest cutting-edge technology at the training ground.
On the basis that money is clearly not an issue, I am surprised to hear that. I have to say that they couldn't have done some work in that regard. They have all the money in the world. It's the most blindingly obvious thing in the world, if you can see what's happening in the background, that they wouldn't have done something about that. That to me is a bit bizarre. I would love to know, and I'm sure Piers has asked him the question. It was a deep sort of interview, as you say, where it was like cutting edge, uncomfortable and questioning, I'm sure, at times. I'm sure he said to him, did you say this to them when you were there? I would be shocked if he did.
I don't know. I'll obviously sit and watch the full interview. I am reminded of Eamon Dunphy talking about Garth Crooks and Sven-Goran Eriksson, and I would fear that compared to Garth Crooks and Sven-Goran Eriksson, this would be more like a little peck in the cheek from Piers Morgan to Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah,
there's no question about it. But like, look, the conclusion out of this obviously is that he wasn't going anywhere fast. By the way, I also think all of this reflects really well on Ten Hag. Like, this was
Ten Hag made him captain a week ago.
I know, but the poison that this guy has become, right? The stuff after the Tottenham game where he walks off, even after all of that, Ten Hag brings him back under the fold, knowing that, you know, there's a personality issue there, if you want to word it that way. Ronaldo wants out. He thinks he's better than the club. He thinks he's better than Ten Hag. Basically thinks he's better than everybody else around him. He hasn't criticised any of his teammates, but you can be damn sure, maybe he does in the interview, you can be damn sure that he thinks he's better than everybody else in the team. That's the underlying point of this entire interview is, I'm better than Rashford, and I'm better than Martial, and I'm better than all these other schleps. Why am I in the team? That's a total disrespect to his teammates as well. None of this reflects well on Ronaldo. I do think it reflects well on Ten Hag. I do think that it's the conclusion of Ronaldo Mark II at United. He knows that he's not going to be playing there, obviously, until the very earliest Stephen's Day anyway. And that's now done. That's cooked. He's gone. As you say, he's gone off to the World Cup. He generally has tended to manage to be able to raise his game a bit more for Portugal over the last couple of years. Maybe he ends up having a good tournament. Maybe, as you say, he's got something else lined up. But I do think the timing of this thing is weird. I think the cozying up to Piers Morgan is bizarre in the absolute extreme.
None of these things are bizarre or weird. It all fits the pattern.
It's not like the two of them have been grooming each other over the last couple of years. Like Piers Morgan's on TalkSport every other week saying, well, I've been talking to Ronaldo and he tells me he's not happy. Now, Ronaldo hears that and he's still in contact with this guy. It's a slightly bizarre using each other dynamic. And that part I don't fully understand, I have to say, like that he chooses that path. Maybe, you hinted earlier on, he's got a club lined up and he's hit the nuclear button because he knows everything is sorted in December anyway, and that's it, done. Bizarre.
I think we have another clip of Ronaldo. So they've only released. We don't have another clip of Ronaldo.
No.
Okay.
That's all you need to hear from now, Nathan. There's more stuff to come.
There's more. I'm sure there's going. Well, I'm wondering, is there going to be that drip feed? Is that all the good stuff?
You'd expect it's the juiciest stuff, but like that's the stuff that makes a lot of the front pages this morning. There's probably loads of stuff as a football fan that you'll be able to get your teeth into afterwards. But I don't think there's any case for him to stay on here. I actually think that Roy Keane also hasn't helped Ronaldo with his endorsing of him walking out after the Tottenham game. I ultimately think that he needed somebody who Ronaldo clearly respects to say at that point, listen, this wasn't right, he shouldn't have done that, he needs to get himself back in the fold, be a team player, which Ronaldo clearly at this stage of his career, at any stage of his career, let's face it, is not.
Does anybody in Ronaldo's position have that person? I don't think so.
Maybe not. There's lots more stuff in there about his personal life, which was obviously tough going from over the last year, but I think that gives you the greater sense of what's going on. So he is firmly in the red, a little less red, but quite red this morning, is Rassie Erasmus, and he's been at it again. South Africa have been beaten again, and Rassie Erasmus has taken to Twitter to, after the loss to France over the weekend, whatever his game is again here, you sort of begin to wonder about people's motives and what the hell is he playing at. You get a bit of a sense. I'm not going to read you the tweets, show you the clips, but he's been given out about some stuff that happened. Forearm challenging one of his players in one of the tweets. Forward pass that wasn't a forward pass, he says in another one. And on it goes. It's more of the stuff that you saw last week and the week before, and then the summer before that. It's just another staging post for Rassie Erasmus. And so who is the target audience for this stuff? Is it that he's going to take some of the heat off his players because people aren't talking about the shortcomings of his team now? Is it trying to reassure his players? Is definitely the school of thought that I subscribe to, that, listen lads, we've just marginally come out on the wrong side here, but it's not us, we got to keep to the plan, it's the referee's fault, and it'll all come right come the World Cup. That's my school of thought, that's who he's actually speaking to here. Is he trying to put minds in the doubt in the minds of referees to say, think twice the next time you're about to make a decision against my team? Or is he just giving himself and the rest of his South African coaching ticket a bit of a break? He's saying, listen, it's not our fault. It's not our fault. Refereeing decisions are going against us. Or is it the South African fans at home? I don't know. Whatever it is, he's well on the road, I think, and looking at some of the reaction online yesterday from some respected sources, he's losing the respect of the international rugby audience. If your terminology about Ronaldo, the greater rugby audience who aren't as au fait with the specific details of all of this as Erasmus is, I think he's starting to lose that respect. And where the hell does he go from here? Like, they play Italy next week. They'll probably beat Italy. I know Italy had a big win over the weekend against Australia, but they'll play them on Saturday. What happens after that? Like, let's say they do win. Is he back on Twitter, like making a few more points? Where does it all end? It's Jose Mourinho, Nathan, I think was the expression you used when you were sat in this seat last week, and he's just short of hopping into the laundry basket.
Yeah, I think the point about the referees and the influence of the referees, it feels like it's gone way past that now. Because when it happens once and the coach of the world champions has a real personal go to referee, you would wonder what impact that would have on that individual. But now it's every week, to the extent that surely all of the referees are thinking, this guy, I'm sick of him. So rather than giving the decisions, human nature would be to rail against them, to go, actually, why would we bother? Like, do you think the referees this weekend are going, oh no, I can't believe Rassie's had a go at us? Like, he has a go every single week. So I can't see it having any positive impact for South Africa. And I do wonder what the South African players think about this. Like, they are the world champions. They should be above this. Like, they should still, while they're preparing for next year, be going around like the big dogs, like not getting into petty little squabbles like this. And maybe it is genius from Rassie Erasmus and it's a pure distraction technique, and again you're talking about that rather than the defeat, and he's doing all sorts of work behind the scenes and they're trying to build towards next year and he's just trying to take the glare off the players. But I just think being a world champion brings you to another level where you have such automatic respect from everybody. You just fall back that constantly. Whereas now it's like they're a bit of a laughing stock. Like people are making a joke out of this every week. Is that what you want to be when you're one of the best rugby players in the world? That's what your coach is turning the rest of the world against you? Well, to continue the Alan Partridge line of thought, he'll have the last laugh is I think what he's getting at here. I think everybody wants consistency from referees, right? There's going to be every single game that's ever been played. There's somebody's got a gripe about the referee somewhere along the line, and he's obviously feeling really put out by this entire thing. And I also feel that it slightly undermines Jacques Nienaber. Like, what's his thought in all of this? He's actually the head coach of this thing, and here's your man, like, who's his boss, director of rugby, who's out on Twitter every other week. I mean, that's not helpful, is it? What does Jacques Nienaber do? Like, is it? Well, he's the man. Real role? Yeah, no, I think he is the man. He's obviously not got the celebrity profile of his boss, ultimately. But you know, Jacques wouldn't be asked on to Strictly Come Dancing, but Rassie might be. I don't think either of them. Oh, South African Strictly, is that what you're talking about? Quite possibly. I don't know if there is a South African Strictly. Tony Adams went from Strictly last night. Oh, did he? Very good dancer. Is he? He kind of came in the first week and he thought he was going to be the joke contestant. Yeah. No, some serious moves. Right. He got injured. The headline was Adams out of Strictly after injury. Is that what happened to him last night, or was he? No, he was injured. He was in the dance off, but he was injured, so he had to step aside. I wouldn't have had you as a Strictly man, Nathan. That's very, very popular in my house. I'm a celeb man. I've watched bits of it. It's just on so often. And also the World Cup is coming up. I know. You can't get too invested. You can't fully commit. It's a very difficult watch. You're watching Matt Hancock and going, like, this guy is responsible for the death of thousands of people, and they're all having a joke, and he sort of gives a half-hearted apology. And I'm just looking for forgiveness. Like, piss off. I think he's actually coming off quite well out of it. But that in itself isn't right. Mike Tyndall is the man. That's. I only saw one bit where one of them asked Mike Tyndall what his wife did. You're joking me. Well, they're probably not in there for their intellect. I'm trying to get through The Crown at the moment, so that's why I'm also not watching Celebrity. I've heard it's not as good as the previous series. No, it's not. The Queen isn't as convincing. I think it's all a bit too real now because you remember it. Whereas actually it felt like, I'm sure it was a very top-line history lesson, and anybody who is more au fait with all this will say, you know, it's a dramatised version of it all. But now, like, it's all 90s, which I can remember, and you're going, was it really like that? I'm not quite sure. And given events, Johnny Lee Miller is John Major. He's just... Johnny Lee Miller's too good looking to be John Major, and the Irish guy is too good looking to be Prince Charles. It's a bit like watching the Titanic as well. You kind of know ultimately the thing is going south. What's going to happen? Anyways, there's the TV review of the weekend. Amber, what do you got for us? In the Amber, I've got Irish rugby. I sort of, before Ronaldo did last night, I think I did Slightly in the Green, which might have been a bit controversial, but it was at the went to the Aviva on Saturday afternoon, Nathan, and I'm not as a downbeat as maybe some of the reports have been on the Irish rugby team after the weekend. Like, it's a bit of a hiding to nothing in a lot of ways, and those games typically tended to have been. I've been at some of those November internationals against Fiji before, and yeah, you're on a bit of a hiding to nothing. Like, unless you go out and beat them by about 50 points, everybody's sort of moaning about it, and obviously the game didn't get off to the most amazing start. But yeah, I think
that obviously everything at the minute is in the context of who's going to make the playing for the World Cup. That's dominating everything. And I do think that actually the A loss to the All Blacks 15s a few weeks ago is going to be referenced for the next year or so. This game might slightly come in under the radar a little bit, but I do think that that was almost a bit of a sliding doors moment for a whole pile of players that aren't realistically now. I think there might be 7 games left before the World Cup starts. Some of them are obviously frontline Six Nations matches, which, you know, I think a bunch of those players are just not going to get their chance to put their hand up. You know, the likes of Gavin Coombs, who got ditched out. The back row is really interesting as a jumping off point, given the competitive nature of it. But I think if you look at the likes of Gavin Coombs, who got ditched out even from the larger squad post that A loss to the New Zealand 15, went back to Munster, like had obviously a very good game for them in the win over South Africa A. But yeah, I think his chance is probably gone now. Like, and he'll probably, you know, he'll be a player who'll come in, probably post the World Cup at some point. Certainly wouldn't think his Ireland career is done, but in terms of World Cup. So you have the likes of that, the sliding doors aspect of it, and then you have Nick Timoney, who gets his shot against Fiji, is retained in the squad. Also one of those players who played in that loss to the All Blacks A. And yeah, I just think given the strength across the back row, there wouldn't have been a huge amount of people who would have given somebody like Nick Timoney a shot at making the World Cup squad. But suddenly he's starting to really play his way into form. You assume he's playing his way into Paul O'Connell's thoughts and Andy Farrell's thoughts. Gets a couple of tries. And you look at the likes of Kieran Treadwell, for example, did well, most likely to miss that New Zealand game. He was a sub against South Africa last weekend, got 50 minutes under his belt on Saturday, nearly had a try to his name. Again, another one of these players that, like, I'm sort of making a case here that people have left the Aviva, it seems like by and large, with the idea that this was
forgettable.
Look, it certainly in terms of the game, I'm not going to make that case. It was drab. I think the referee probably didn't help it, and I'm not going to go full Rassie on him. It probably didn't help it. It was very stop-start. It was error-strewn as well, so not entirely his fault. But I do think that the likes of Kieran Treadwell, for example, like, there is a bit of a bubbling under of players who have suddenly become live options. The one area, of course, that is the constant point of conversation that we still don't know exactly where we're at on is 10.
Well, this is basically a referendum on Joey Carbery, and you look at that starting team in the back line, like, it doesn't take a huge amount to happen for that to be an Irish backline in a Six Nations game or a World Cup, where he's starting alongside Jameson Gibson-Park. Mac Hansen and Robert Balakoon are on the wings. He's got Robbie Henshaw and Stuart McCluskey in the centre. All right, you'd expect that Jimmy O'Brien won't be starting these games, but he has a lot of quality outside him and experience.
Yeah.
Did he pass?
Oh, did he pass the ball? Did he pass? I mean, he did. But look, number one thing to say, I think, about the 10 position is that the benchmark for the level we expect the 10 to get to is too high. At the minute, Johnny Sexton's probably the best number 10 in the world, and, like, getting better with age, it's incredible. Like, the idea that he's going to retire in 12 months' time, look, at maybe at that point his powers are beginning to wane, and you know, everybody's sort of satisfied that it's all done and dusted and away he goes. But he's playing at the peak of his powers, and it's an unfair benchmark. The reason that Johnny Sexton is the you know, top choice for Ireland is that he's by far and away the best number 10. You would just like the gap. Sexton is like a 9 or a 10 out of 10 almost every game he plays, and then the rest are about, they sort of waver between a 6 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 depending, and any of them can sort of swap into that position. With Joey Carbery specifically, it's just never felt as if he's come in and grabbed the position by the scruff of the neck and put his stamp on it and said, that's it, I'm here, I'm going to go ahead. Look at again, he obviously, his game ended a bit prematurely the last day, but certainly in the minutes he had, it just wasn't what you want from a player against that level of opposition to be able to dictate the game. He's very good out of hand, obviously, with from the boot out of hand. He's very good place kicking, all that sort of stuff is very good, but it's always in that 6 to 8 out of 10 range, and you just kind of want, you know, and you look at the players that are stacking up behind him, Nathan, as well. You've got, obviously, Frawley looks to be possibly pushing in for that number 3 position now. Crowley, potentially, from what we saw last week. We're not going to see enough of Harry Byrne, I don't think, before the World Cup. Ross Byrne seems to be out of favour. Carty the same. Ben Healy was incredible for Munster last weekend in Cork, but he's not really in the mix. So you have a bunch of players there who roughly, I think, give or take, you could sort of swap any of them in for Sexton at any given point. But we're all in on the Carbery train.
So and Carbery's spending more time looking behind him than looking in front of him?
Yeah, probably. But he also doesn't seem by personality that he is that type of personality that's going to go in. He seems like a quiet enough sort of chap, even around the pitch. It doesn't seem like he's barking at... And it's hard. Like, he's stepping onto the pitch there and he's like, you know, straight away he must be thinking, okay, like, I know you're used to having the best, you know, 10 in the world stood in this position, and he's barking at you, and he's giving order, and he's got 10 years experience behind him. And Carberry doesn't have any of that. Like, he needs... What Carberry needs, or needed, I should say...
It is 6 years in Chicago.
Well, he needed... It's a great point. Sexton to have got injured at some point for a prolonged period of time to get the games that he was going to get, because no Ireland coach was going to go, we've got this guy over here and he's amazing and we're just going to take him out for a long period of time to give the next guy some game time. And the thing that we're still unsure about is if he had got a run of 6 or 7 or 8 games, Carberry, at that full test level against full test teams, would he have stood up? We're still not sure about that. And that's a slightly dangerous position to be in, heading into a World Cup. 2 other points. Could I have time to make 2 other points about the Aviva on Saturday?
Go on.
Sorry, it's 1 point, but I had 2 points out of it. I think I've solved the people going for pints and everybody getting pissed off about it situation, which I was in again on Saturday, and I'd sort of wavered, right? My starting position was, I don't mind. If you need to go for a pint, you need to go for a pint, you need to go for a piss, do it, that's fine. You've paid your money in, that's grand. I'd gone from that to been to the Leinster-Munster game with my 2 kids and being just sort of annoyed by the amount of people getting in and out and how distracting it was. And now I think I've solved it. I think
here we go.
The first thing is that the Aviva need to introduce seat service. Bring the pints to the people.
Happens in a lot of stadiums now.
Happens in almost all American sport. Like, it's a slight bit of an inconvenience. You have somebody going around, they're dishing out pints. It reduces all the queues. It's not going to fully do away with, like, you can't really have the chip vendors out or the Guinness. I don't think you can really serve Guinness in that way. I think the Guinness drinkers will be like, no thanks. I'll go up to the bar and get her from the full draft.
I think you're getting that balance between handiness and it being 30 seconds too long sitting there. I think if you go to those matches anyway, it's quite often they just fill the Guinness and they leave it sitting there and they hand it to you straight away.
I'm not saying it's the greatest pint in the world, but I am saying that I think that you'll have a lot of snobs like yourself who'll be like, listen, I don't want to be seen to be drinking this thing.
If they bring you a glass of wine, I'm happy.
Exactly. So I think that seat service is the first point. And the other point about that is that the person is going to have enough cop on, so they'll be trained enough to know that they can duck and dive and get their way out. And that leads me to the second point. If you are going in and out to get your pints, have some cop on. So there was a few people, and this is fairly typical, stood in front of us and they were going in to get a pint. And it wasn't like, you know, so there's 10 minutes to go to half time and you're sort of ducking out from the people and you're sort of excusing yourself and you're getting in and out as quick as you can. What was happening was they were stood up. You have a pint, you have a pint, you okay? You have a pint of 5 pints, okay, great. And they come back with the 5 pints and they 5 of them will stand up in front of the row behind them and start dishing out the pints. Get in, get your pints, get sat down. I mean, I know I'm going full Rassie on this. Get sat down as soon as you can and have some respect for the people around you. They're the 2 things that I think would solve this thing. So they can keep the bars open, keep the money flowing, keep the people who want a pint having a pint. Just get seat service and punters have some cop on. Fair enough?
Won't lie, I was expecting a little bit more innovation with that. So your 2 plans are just copy what they do in pretty much every other stadium in the world and don't be an asshole.
That's pretty much it. Don't be a dickhead. No dickheads rule for the fans going into the Aviva.
Good morning to all the children on their way to school this morning. Great to see you guys. Hope you have a lovely day. World Cup start next week. Hopefully the teachers let you watch some of it. Hopefully the teachers will let you watch some of it is what we want for all of you. That is you're right on the second part. It's almost become part of the show for people is, oh look, I'm going to bring back 8 pints. Hey, everybody's. It's like, no, we don't care that you're buying pints for you and all your mates. Just sit down, shut up and watch the game. And also, like, know when to do it. So if you're about to walk back out of the doors, back down to your seat, wait until there's a break and play. Like, don't be coming down when there's sort of Ireland are pumping the try line. Hold off. That all fits into the don't be it, whatever you're having yourself. Let's get to the green. Into the green, and I've put Arsenal in the green here, Nathan. I mean, it's a broader conversation about where the Premier League is at the minute, but basically it's basically in the green. Arsenal are leading the way for all the other 7 or 8 teams in the Premier League who have a shot at either winning the title now, and I think that's realistically a conversation, or definitely making it into the Champions League, and it follows obviously Man City's loss at home to Brentford on Saturday. So it means that Arsenal are 5 points clear at the top of the Premier League. They had a 2-0 win at Wolves, and it makes incredible reading, I think, for Arsenal fans this morning. They're going to be top of the league
for Christmas. I mean, unless the bottom totally falls out of it. No, they will be. They will be.
There's no more games. There's no
more games.
That's the joke. They're on top of Christmas and it's still 6 weeks till Christmas.
Okay, they will be top of the league for Christmas, and they're 5 points clear, and they have West Ham, I think, on Stephen's night, and that'll be a London derby, and the only slight sort of fly in the ointment for Arsenal is, and maybe for the rest of them, is that the break has come at the wrong time. Like, you know, it's momentum is with them. They're seemingly unbeatable, obviously playing really well. They've, you know, Odegaard bangs in a couple for them again at the weekend. And it's just a really positive, good news story. And you would like, look, it's Man City, right? And does it take them very long to bounce back from the thing? Does it really matter if they were playing again tonight or at the weekend or during the week? They'd probably go out and hammer whoever the hell they were playing anyway. But I do think that any hope that fans have of City not winning the Premier League, no matter what club you're supporting, I do think you'd want to test that out. You'd want to see them out on a Wednesday night or next Saturday.
I think teams are looking at Manchester City more this season as a team that they can test and that they can get at and that they can attack. And like, Brentford fully deserved to win that game. They had 3 chances before they even opened the scoring. You know, they went route one quite a bit, and City's defence seemed to struggle with that. And with the exception of Erling Haaland, a lot of these City players aren't at their best. Like, João Cancelo isn't having anywhere near the impact on games that he had over the last couple of seasons. Akanji's come in at the back and has done well, but it does feel it's a bit away from Diaz and Laporte at their absolute peak. A lot of these players may well have the World Cup in their mind. Like, with the exception of the Manchester derby, which was one of the great Premier League performances. Phil Foden scored a very good goal at the weekend, but even Guardiola's admitted he's been quiet. Grealish, again, with the exception of that game, hasn't quite stepped forward. So I'm not fully convinced that City are all that and will get to close to 100 points this season. So I think there is an opportunity there for Arsenal, and I've been on the Arsenal bandwagon for quite a while. I thought people were way over the top in their criticism in the one game they lost this season against Manchester United, where they made a couple of mistakes at the back, but by and large for an hour of that game they were the better team. And Granit Xhaka goes off injured very early, or he was sick or something very early in that game on Saturday night. Fabio Vieira comes in and is brilliant. Like, the 3 players playing behind Gabriel Jesus, one of them always steps up every single day, whether it's Martinelli, Odegaard at the weekend, Saka. Jesus isn't scoring, but the amount of tackles he won inside his own half to set them away on counter-attacks, he's offering something very different to that team. They're not making many mistakes at the back. They've got a good goalkeeper. Maybe they go and they sign somebody in January and they add a little bit more depth. But right now, with a 5-point lead, it does feel as though Arsenal are going to be there till the bitter end with this. Who knows what happens post-World Cup? Well,
they're going to sign Ronaldo, if what Piers Morgan says.
I do wonder the mentality of players that they come back, and we don't know what's going to happen over the next month, but like, if Saka was to miss a penalty again in a World Cup final, like, does he come back and is he absolutely devastated and that disrupts Arsenal's season? Or if England lose in the final, is Phil Foden distraught? Or if they win, do they come back and they're too cocky and they're celebrating for the next 3 months and they're not that worried about Manchester City because they've literally achieved anything greater with England than they'll ever achieve at Manchester City? And there's obviously 50 players with that sort of mindset, whether it's the Brazilian lads or the Argentinian players. Or does any of that matter, and will they all just come back and since Stephen said it's like the World Cup never happened?
Yeah, and look, who knows? Because the flip of that could easily... I mean, I don't think England are going to win the World Cup. Great news flash there. And I also think City are going to still win the Premier League. It sounds like...
I think City are still favourites, but we've gone into every season with what's happened with Liverpool and Manchester City going, you probably need 93, 94 points minimum to have a chance of winning the title. I don't know if that's the case this season. And Arsenal are well on course for that sort of tally. Like, they've only dropped points in 2 games all season. They've won 12 of 14 matches. So they're setting a real pace right now. And I quite often when you look at the best teams in the league, teams sit very, very deep and they try and hold out for a scoreless draw. And against City, that's almost impossible because there are so many talented attacking players. They're always going to score. Whereas a lot of the mid-ranking teams now, watching them this season, feels as though they're willing to have a go at Manchester City and accept that they might concede, but they're trying to score. And City's defence isn't as strong as it was with Kyle Walker out injured as well. There's definitely an opportunity, I think, for teams to get at them. So I just don't feel it'll be as straightforward. And even the amount of points they're dropping, I see people writing today, like, are Liverpool fully out of it? I just don't think... I think they're not, except you couldn't trust Liverpool to go on the sort of run they've gone in previous seasons where they win 12 games or 14 games in a row. There's just nothing to suggest that's going to happen. But I think City are going to drop a lot more points. The other thing is Arsenal and City have to play each other twice in the second half of the season because their game was postponed earlier this year. Like Arsenal's fixture list, you touched, like it's a difficult fixture list when they come back. West Ham and Stevens Day, then they go to Brighton, then Newcastle, Tottenham, Manchester United. 3-game run.
Tough run of games. Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't know, look, from a City point of view, it's obviously a lot of this is based off one game is the thing, and even at that, they're obviously pushing for the winner against Brentford, and they get caught in a brilliant counter-attack. Absolutely. Who was that player that broke down the left-hand side? Brilliant.
Was it
Brilliant break at pace, catches them totally on the hop. Even for all that, City's back four get perfectly set, and Brentford still managed to score, which was a slightly surprise. It was only on the replay, when I looked at the back four, I realised that one of the centre-backs was Erling Haaland, which is probably, I mean, a great sort of indictment of him as a player and his ability to get back, although he seems to have he got injured somehow, did he, between like full time in that game and then not been able to come over here.
Again, for the kids listening in the car who are looking forward to going to Lansdowne Road on Thursday night to see Erling Haaland.
He might still be there.
That's bad news for you kids. The RTE promo for that, they went all, I don't know if you saw this over the weekend, they're obviously going to have to change it, which was basically Ireland are taking on Erling Haaland and some other guys. It's like, if I'm Martin Odegaard, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm kind of better than anybody in your team. Maybe show me a little bit of respect. The thing with City is it's not just one game, because the match before that, they need a 95th minute penalty at home against Fulham to win that game. Like the Leicester game was a very tight match. A couple of weeks before that, Liverpool beat them. So the break is probably coming at a good time for Manchester City.
Right, top of the performance rankings this morning, Nathan, are the FAI Cup winners, Derry City. And congratulations to everybody involved in Derry. Obviously, a big win for them over the weekend in every regard. It's a match that has tended to be really high on drama over the last 10, 12 years, and even beyond that, extra time, penalties, really tight scorelines. But this was a very disappointing finish to the season, obviously, for Shelbourne. But for Derry, certainly obviously came up a small bit short in the league, didn't finish the last few games strongly, and maybe that was one of the biggest question marks heading into the game yesterday, that they was at 1 point from 9 over the last few weeks, at a point where they needed to keep the pressure obviously on at the top. But there is 25 points between Derry and Shelbourne in the league, and that was abundantly clear in the game yesterday. It's the biggest ever FAI Cup final winning margin, and as I said, a competition with such a reputation for tight games, and they conceded within the first 20 minutes, and that was, I sort of always meant, I think, from the way that Shelbourne would have approached the game, knowing that Derry City were going to control the ball, chances were going to be few, they needed to keep it tight at the back, that I think conceding that early was ultimately the death knell for that Shelbourne team. And like Damien Duff obviously is a big part of the storyline around this. It was so interesting to see, and it wasn't the first time that you've heard Damien Duff talk about so passionately about his involvement with Shells and what it means to him. Like, for a player who's achieved what he's achieved in his career, he's still talking about, like, you know, what, 10 foot tall, walking into the Aviva. It was like the most important game in his career, I think he might have said, or something along those lines. He said afterwards, I'll be at the FAI Cup final out till the day I die, whether that's on the touchline or not. There's obviously a talk of a takeover at Shelbourne, and it'll be really interesting to see if there is a takeover and he's able to bring in some quality, because, you know, he speaks really respectfully about the players that he has, but you still understand that it's a young squad and they're not to the level that he'd like to be working with. So it'll be interesting to see if he does get the pieces of the jigsaw that he's actually happy with, what type of manager he is. But it must have been it was very clearly very disappointing.
They were huge. Didn't have a single shot on target in the entire game. And he mentioned that after match, that the players have to go in and look at themselves in the mirror now after this and realise that they turned up on Cup final day and they didn't perform. And that's a difficult thing for any sports person, and for pretty much to be across the team. Now, Derry were very good. It sort of fitted in with a lot of the predictions that if Derry got the first goal, they could run riot, and they did. And for them now, it is looking up, because while there was 13 points between themselves and Shamrock Rovers, it could have been very, very different. They just drew way too many games, particularly at home over the course of the season. There wasn't that big a gap, and like, they have an owner with a lot of money to invest. They have some good young players. They've got a lot of experience. Like, they brought brilliantly in getting Michael Duffy up and getting Patrick McElhenney up, like two of the best players in the league. And we don't really know what's going to happen with Shamrock Rovers and what players they're going to bring in. So it's going to be a fascinating transfer window to see if Derry can close that gap further, and you feel they will, that it's going to be between these two next season. Andy Lyons is leaving Shamrock Rovers. Like, will Neil Ferrugia still be there? They've got a lot of players in their late 20s, early 30s. So first cup final in a decade for Derry. They haven't won the league for over a quarter of a century. So yeah, it's good for the league if there's two teams competing, and it does feel as though Derry are going to be in this for the long haul. Like for Rory Higgins, first season in charge. Big achievement. You know, I was commentating on a game yesterday with Nick Perth, and Rory Higgins was his assistant, and then he went off with Ireland, and he could have probably stayed in that nice gig with Stephen Kenny for another while, but wanted his hometown job and all the pressure that came with that, and he's done brilliantly. Yeah, and I think even from same with Duff, obviously two managers in their first year. It's incredible in some ways that it's still Duff's first year. He said I know he was talking about like the way you just sort of. There are a lot of players who've achieved what he's achieved in his career will come into that job and try to trade off that as that's their currency. Whereas actually he's totally obsessed by this thing. It's incredible. He said, I know Derry City better than I know my wife and my kids. He's so obsessive about it and ambitious. I want to build Rome in a day, he said afterwards. Like, it's just, it's really impressive to watch, I must say, and he's very clearly committed to it, like to the point where you could see him managing Shelbourne for the next 10 years. I mean, I don't know, maybe the players come in that actually end up ending Damien Duff's career with Shelbourne in terms of he gets a thirst for management and ends up getting, hauled off somewhere else, and he'll be in tears as he leaves Shelbourne. Who knows what happens? But certainly, listening to him now, I don't want to be down on Shelbourne fans this morning, kicking them while they're down, but you do feel as if he's got management in his blood, and it's going to be for a while. We should mention as well, obviously there was trouble in the stands yesterday. It was flares thrown onto the pitch, and then Shelbourne fans seemed to be fighting each other. It was a slightly bizarre scenario that happened at one of the ends, and I'm sure we haven't heard the end of it, but ugly enough scenes, it must be said. You don't like to see it, particularly on a day like that where it was one of the biggest ever attendances at an FAI Cup final. Disappointing to see, but great day for Derry City. None of them turned up at a hurl though. No, that is true. That is something we might touch on a little bit later, yeah. We'll come back to that, what happened at Parnell Park as well. Good job, Adrian. Well done. Debut, thank you.